And now we move from these student issues to sport in general. Could you tell like how many sports you practiced before you were graduated to university during your university life? Yes, you personally. And after the graduation, for example, now I know that you participated in Ironman and the marathon also probably.
Well, yeah, I love sport, so this could be a long answer, but so when I was a kid, a young kid, I played soccer, or as you call it, football. I played ice hockey. In elementary school, I did some kind of cross-country running. I played some baseball. Um, those are kind of the sports that I liked as a kid growing up. Hockey probably being my favorite. When I got into high school, that's when I kind of got into running, and I discovered for the first time in grade 10 cross-country running and then cross-country skiing, which I kind of had a natural tendency before. And then I started bike racing, and I was a good time trialist, and that's what kind of eventually led me to triathlon, because I'm bigger than a lot of triathletes, and so I was strong, and that led me to try triathlon. I was a good swimmer. I joined a swim club. So then I really, in high school, focused on that. I cross-country skied for our university team. We won like a provincial championship, and that's what I went on to do at university. So I went to University of Waterloo. I was a cross-country skier. Played hockey all the way through. I still play hockey now as a old guy in the student league. I think I'm the oldest player in the student league. If you know Jaromir Jagr, who plays in the NHL, I'm basically the same age as him. So we're the old guys still playing. Then, so for triathlon, I got in and I represented Canada at 5 World Championships as an age grouper, and got to race. I did 6 Ironmans, and I've done a whole bunch of triathlons. Then kind of when I got into working and had a family, I still did a few, and I run a little bit, and I cross-country ski in the winter. I think I mentioned I swam at university as well at grad school, and then and today, yeah, I just do it to stay fit. So this year I'm doing an Ironman. I'm trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So I'm still running. I play hockey once a week, and I swim with Masters Swim Club at the university. Our kids swim with us there. And I'm doing my first Ironman this summer. I'm going to do it in Mont Tremblant in Quebec. It'll be my first one in 16 years. So I've done some halves and some stuff in a while. So that's kind of my big focus. But I love sport like all of you, and I find with a healthy body you can do a lot more. You can push yourself a lot harder, and it helps with work. So I just like to stay involved. So. Yeah.
But do you have any of these sports like as your favorite probably?
It's a good question, because I describe myself as just a sport fanatic. Like I really love sport. Like when I've been at the Olympic Games and I get a chance to go to fencing or badminton or sitting volleyball or wheelchair rugby. I really love sport. I like to run, like to bike, like to push myself really hard in triathlons, and so that's kind of my interest now. But I'll play a round of golf. I like to play golf with friends and stuff like that, and that's kind of the interest now. In terms of teams, if you talk about fandom and spectators, I mean, I'm a big fan of a lot of sports, and I follow them. But when you've worked with a lot of them, and I work with all the leagues and teams within them and stuff, you don't really have a favorite team anymore. I tell the students that, like, if you got a favorite team now, you're probably going to give them up by the time your career is done, because you can't go in. I'll use a European example. You can't go into Manchester United and say, "Oh, I'm a diehard fan of Chelsea, but I want to work for you." Like, that kind of disappears. So now we cheer for the home teams wherever we live, and I cheer for Team Canada at Olympic Games and stuff like that, and Paralympic Games, and just really love sports. But I'm one of those people that are just a sport fanatic. I just like all sports. So.
And now a bit about sports management. Like we know that many international sports organizations they are located in Switzerland, but with one big exception that the headquarter of WADA is in Canada. So do you have any explanation why it's like that? Because it's a lot of rumors that WADA doesn't have enough money like to make investigations ahead of doping producers, and probably this location they have to move to Switzerland also. Like, what is the North American point of view? And probably you can provide us with more information, like why it's still there and has to be moved or not.
So I remember. So first thing, I don't know any inside information, but the first thing I remember when the decision was made, I worked for the Toronto Olympic bid when we bid for the Olympic Games in 2008 that China won. So the vote was in 2001. And on that ballot, Dick Pound, who's a Canadian IOC member and had been a VP and actually ended up being the founding president of WADA, was going for the IOC president. He was running for IOC president. Toronto was going for the bid, and there was also a bid for who was going to host WADA, and Canada and Montreal was on there. So we had three things we were going for. Jacques Rogue won the IOC presidency. Beijing won the Olympics. And so I wonder if there was just like people felt bad for Canada, so they gave us WADA because we'd lost the first two votes. So I think it was really a political decision. That's my guess. I don't know any inside information, but there's a lot on the table, and I think people maybe felt that Canada deserves something. I think the other reason that WADA's in Canada is Canada's because of the Ben Johnson incident. I don't know if you know the Ben Johnson is. He's a sprinter, shattered the world record. His times, no one ran the times he ran until Usain Bolt. His records have all been eliminated because he was the first major in Seoul in 1988, major doping case. I think he ran a 9.79 when the world record was 9.99 or something. And so it was this glorious day for Canada. I mean, glorious until the next morning when he tested positive. And so it put a real black mark on Canada. It turns out in the end that most of the other competitors in that final have also tested positive. But Canada had this big Dublin inquiry with the judge. We're one of the first places where the government got really serious about it because it really hurt our reputation as a country, right? It was really a black eye. I mean, Russia's feeling it right now, right after what happened. It was exactly the same in Canada. And so the government put a lot of effort into it. So we were and we were one of the first to do that. So I think there was a natural connection to Canada. I know the Canadian government put a good chunk of resources towards the WADA offices being in Montreal, whereas other countries at the time weren't as in. Remember, professional sport was turning their back on. The world's very different today. I mean, the world's kind of on side that doping's got to be eradicated. In 1999, 2000, 2001, there was only a few countries that, remember, it was it was a different political situation. I think those would be the two factors, probably. The politics of Canada having lost the other votes, Canada being a very supportive anti-doping nation would be the reasons why it's in Montreal. In terms of your other question, whether you would want to move it or different places, I think anytime you move and stuff, it slows things down. I think Canada would like to keep it. I think the issue is really not at the head office. The issue is with the doping centers. I mean, I just read this morning that the one in Mexico City is being censored now too for poor protocols, and I know that's happening around the world. That's the issue. The issue is the testing. I think they've got the legal and the administrative stuff. I mean, it's not perfect, but that's pretty solid. The testing protocols, reliable testing out of competition testing, that's the challenge still, right? And so if those labs get more reliable around the world, I think that's going to be their focus as opposed to where the headquarters are. My 2 cents.
Okay, it's really a great answer. I think you just make our understanding better, I hope. And now move to ice hockey. It's interesting for me, especially. I'm not a big ice hockey fan, but probably you can say from Canadian point of view why ice hockey is so popular in Canada. And another question: what do you think about KHL? It's new league, but we saw a lot of financial statements, and it's still under budget. Almost all the clubs. NHL is really successful. Is there any perspective for KHL also?
Yes, I'll start with part one. So part one is ice hockey in Canada. It's interesting. So I guess part of it's the climate, like Russia. I mean, it's the sport that we all played as kids. It's actually declining in Canada, which is the challenge. Less kids are playing, and the spectator audience is getting older. So what's happened is a lot more options now, right? It's harder to play outdoors. People live in cities. They don't live. Everyone else used to grow up in small towns or on farms where you could play in your backyard. So that's challenging. And then for the young people, you can watch NBA, NFL. You can engage in UFC. There's so many more options that are readily available in terms of spectatorship. It's still the most popular sport by a long shot, but not as strong as it once was. The sport overall is in an amazing time. From a spectator perspective, so the 2010 Olympics in Canada, 2/3 of the population watched the gold medal game when Canada won in overtime. 2/3 of the population were watching on television, which is extraordinary. So 23 million out of at the peak when Sidney Crosby scored, and it was a scripted game, which was wonderful. So it's really at its peak, and then you're seeing this growth around the world. So countries, the former Soviet countries that have all started their own teams. You've got Slovakia, you've got the Scandinavian countries. In the United States, hockey, the NHL has really done an amazing job. And so all those experiments into the southern, there's been a few that haven't done well, but a lot of these places like Texas, Ohio, where I am now, California, Florida, hockey, lots of kids are playing hockey. And so you're getting this huge, and they're fans, and so you're getting this massive growth in the United States. So the sport is growing and growing and growing. Oh yeah, and so in the Olympic Games has been a huge help. You got the World Cup of Hockey now. The challenge is the IHF World Championships fall when the Stanley Cup playoffs are, but it's all really good. But I think for a Canadian kid in Canada, it's just part of what it means to be Canadian. So I think of British and soccer. And so in sponsorship, we're doing a lot of work. We've done these big studies of value, and hockey is so linked, and so many sponsors that are trying to be Canadian link into hockey. I mean, Sidney Crosby is probably the most popular, well-known Canadian. Wayne Gretzky was before. You go down the list. So it's really just part of the culture, but challenging. Like Hockey Canada is working hard, and it's challenging to stay there because the young people today have a lot more opportunities to do stuff. There are not as many of them are playing as kids. Girls has exploded. Women's hockey in Canada is now 150,000 girls play. About 500,000 Canadian boys play. It's been pretty solid, and so that's a huge growth area. And the problem with that one is Canada and the U.S. are so far ahead. The other countries, there's not enough competitiveness at the Olympic level, but Canada's won the last, I think, 3 or 4 gold medals in women's hockey as well. And the women's hockey gold medal game in Vancouver had over 10 million audience. So women's hockey is the second most popular sport after men's hockey, ahead of other things, which is amazing. So anyways, you're getting the answer. It's very culturally there, but you can't just stay there. The rest of the world is catching up. Part B, sorry that was long, Part B around the KHL. I think, obviously I'm a fan of globalization and global sport, and I think it's good. I mean, competition is always good. There's been a few players like Kovalchuk that I think the diehard NHL fan would like to have stayed. I mean, Yager left for 4 years, and he's now back. You wonder how many points he would be the number 2 all-time leading scorer if he hadn't have left. So there's that kind of piece that kind of hurts you a bit as a fan, like just as a pure fan. But anytime it grows and the game gets stronger, and more people are playing, and there's more opportunities for players. A lot of Canadians have gone to coach and play in the KHL too. There's a lot of opportunities for them who couldn't make the NHL or later in their career, and vice versa. It's all good, and I think and places where players can get paid to play are very rare. And the KHL, like the NHL, not to the same extent, but the players are making very good wages, very good lives, very good careers. Because for years and years and years, Canadian players have gone to Europe to play. American players go to Europe and play, and vice versa. But there are the next tier down in terms of salary and livelihood. Still did well, but it's nice to see. So, and I follow the financials closely too. And there's a few clubs doing well, and a few that's a concern. I think the biggest concern would be the league doesn't survive, and there's a lot of failed leagues all the time. But I think anyone that's for ice hockey wants the KHL to thrive and be strong. The NHL's got some clubs too that still have to. That are not financially secure yet either, right? So it's good for the sport overall.
Yeah, but probably could you briefly describe like perception of a typical North American of KHL? Like in Europe, people NHL, for people who are interested in ice hockey, wow, it's great. But what is the perception of KHL? They try like, oh, they like kids, they doing some leagues, but it's not.
Okay. Yeah, I think because Canada is so hockey crazy, I bet you every diehard Canadian game has seen a KHL game on television because you can get access to it, you can follow it, you can see it. We know the players. We see the World Championship. Oh yeah, people watch it. They know what the Russian players are like. Since the series in the 70s, Canada and Russia is the biggest rivalry in the world, right? And the Russians are known to play most people say is a more entertaining game. Now the gap is narrow, but Canada used to be much more physical, and the Russians are a much more beautiful game, and we're known for that. I don't think there's a negative perception at all. I think the only perception is the only negative thing would be people that were Kovalchuk fans or Yager fans or down the list you go, and they're now gone. Because I mean, he had a lot of fans. He's a spectacular, fun player to watch, right? And now he's gone. Yager had huge legions of fans. Well, now they're all back. And when he left, the people were pretty disappointed. So I think that at a fan level, there's that. But then you can quite easily see the game. So the hockey fan, they know hockey. They would know it to probably be a faster, higher scoring game. So I mean, junior hockey in Canada is very popular. and it has less, like, they don't allow fighting. It's got less contact. And people know it to be a faster, more entertaining version. And the NHL has been working hard, and they've done a great job to make the game faster, cut down on the clutching and grabbing. But it's still, they're bigger players. It's, really physical, which is a wonderful part of the game. So I think that would be the thing people would notice. But I wouldn't think there's a negative